In this episode, we focus on a challenge that sits right in the middle of real-world AI use. You need to review outputs for trust and safety, but you cannot review everything all the time without turning AI into a bottleneck. Beginners often imagine two extremes. Either you trust the model and move fast, or you review every output and move slowly, but the best approach is neither extreme. The best approach is designing review so it is targeted, proportional, and integrated into normal work. Review is a control that can prevent harm, correct errors, and build confidence, but only if the review process is realistic enough that people will actually follow it. If review is too heavy, people will bypass it, which creates shadow usage and makes risk harder to manage. If review is too light, unsafe outputs can reach users and erode trust quickly. The goal is to review AI outputs in a way that improves trust and safety while preserving the speed and scale that made AI attractive in the first place. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyber.author.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. To design review well, you need a clear meaning for trust and safety in the context of outputs. Trust is not blind belief that the output is correct. Trust is confidence that the output is appropriate for its intended use and that errors will be detected before they cause serious harm. Safety is the idea that outputs should not expose sensitive information, encourage dangerous actions, or cause unfair or harmful outcomes. Trust and safety also include consistency, because inconsistent outputs create confusion and over-reliance in the wrong situations. Beginners sometimes think safety is only about blocking offensive content, but safety is broader, including misinformation, privacy leakage, and harmful recommendations. When you define trust and safety clearly, you can design review criteria that match your actual risks rather than reviewing everything with vague instincts. Clear criteria also help reviewers make consistent decisions, which is important because inconsistent review can be as damaging as no review at all. A central strategy for avoiding business slowdown is risk-based review, where you review more when consequences are higher and less when consequences are lower. Risk-based review begins with understanding how outputs are used. If outputs are internal drafts that a human will edit, you can review by sampling and focusing on patterns rather than checking every sentence. If outputs are sent directly to customers, the risk is higher, so review should be stronger, especially early in deployment. If outputs influence decisions about money, access, or safety, review should be strict and often mandatory. Beginners should see this as triage, similar to how hospitals prioritize patients based on severity. The idea is not that low-risk outputs do not matter, but that scarce human attention should be spent where it reduces the most harm. When review effort matches risk, you protect users without choking the workflow. Another tool for maintaining speed is sampling, which means reviewing a portion of outputs rather than all outputs. Sampling can be structured so it still provides strong safety benefits, especially when combined with monitoring. For example, you might review a random sample of routine outputs to detect trends in accuracy and tone. You might increase sampling for new model versions, new features, or new user groups because uncertainty is higher. You might sample more heavily in the first weeks after deployment and then adjust once evidence shows stable behavior. Sampling works because many output problems are not isolated. They appear as patterns over time, such as recurring hallucinations, recurring privacy leaks, or recurring unsafe advice. Beginners sometimes worry sampling will miss a critical output, and that is a valid concern. But sampling is paired with stronger review for high-risk cases and with automated triggers for obvious risk signals. Sampling is a way to keep review present without forcing a manual stop on every interaction. Exception-based review is another method that keeps the business moving because it routes only certain outputs to humans. Exception-based review depends on triggers that suggest higher risk. Triggers can include sensitive topics, unusual requests, requests that include personal information, outputs that would trigger actions, or outputs generated for external audiences. Triggers can also include system signals like low confidence, repeated attempts to bypass restrictions, or rapid high-volume use that suggests automation or misuse. The goal is to focus human attention on outputs that are more likely to cause harm or be wrong in important ways. Beginners should understand that exception-based review is a form of automation that supports humans rather than replacing them. It is like a quality control filter that flags items for inspection instead of inspecting every item on the assembly line. To make review effective, you must decide what reviewers actually look for, because vague review means inconsistent review. Reviewers typically check for factual correctness in the areas that matter, for unsafe guidance, for privacy leakage, and for tone that could mislead or harm users. Reviewers also check whether the output matches policy boundaries, such as not making claims it cannot justify or not revealing restricted information. A good review approach also checks whether the output might be interpreted as authoritative in a risky way, especially for beginners who might trust confident language. Review criteria should be simple enough that reviewers can apply them quickly without drifting into endless debate. Beginners should recognize that a review process without criteria often becomes slow because reviewers do not know what to prioritize and end up overanalyzing low-impact details. Clear criteria speed up review because they focus attention on what truly matters for safety and trust. Another important element is deciding where review happens in the workflow, because timing affects both safety and speed. Pre-release review means you review outputs before they reach users, which is safer for high-risk contexts but can slow down delivery. Post-release review means outputs go out quickly but are reviewed afterward, which preserves speed but requires strong monitoring and fast response when issues are found. A hybrid approach is common, where high-risk outputs require pre-release review and low-risk outputs are sampled post-release. This hybrid approach can be designed so most routine workflows quickly while still preventing the most serious harms. Beginners should understand that review is not a single switch you turn on. It is a set of design choices about where safety is worth friction. The art is placing friction only where it prevents meaningful harm, not where it creates busy work. Review must also be connected to feedback and improvement, or it becomes an endless audit with no benefits. If reviewers repeatedly see the same kind of error, the system should be adjusted so the error becomes less common. That adjustment might involve changing prompts, tightening constraints, improving data sources, or tuning monitoring triggers. Review is valuable because it reveals reality, and reality should shape system improvements. Beginners often assume the model is fixed and review is only about catching mistakes, but review is also about learning how the model behaves in your environment. When review findings are fed back into validation and change management, the system gets better over time and the review burden can decrease. This is how you avoid slowing the business in the long term. You invest in review early, use it to improve controls, and then rely more on stable safeguards as confidence grows. A key risk to avoid is review fatigue, because tired reviewers make inconsistent decisions and may miss important issues. Review fatigue happens when volume is too high, criteria are unclear, or the process feels pointless. Designing review to avoid fatigue means limiting the number of items that require human attention, rotating responsibilities, and ensuring reviewers have enough context to make quick, accurate judgments. It also means measuring the review process, such as tracking how many outputs are flagged, how many are corrected, and how long review takes. These measurements help you tune the process so it remains effective rather than becoming a burden. Beginners should understand that human oversight is a control like any other control, and like any control, it can fail if it is overloaded. The goal is sustainable review, not heroic review. Another common beginner misunderstanding is thinking that speed always means risk and that safety always means slowness. In practice, well-designed review can increase speed by preventing crises. When unsafe outputs reach customers, the organization often spends far more time managing complaints, correcting misinformation, and repairing trust than it would have spent on targeted review. When a privacy leak occurs, the response can be costly and disruptive, including investigations, notifications, and policy changes. Review prevents these disruptions by catching problems early and by signaling when the system is being used beyond its safe boundaries. Review also helps maintain user trust, which supports adoption and reduces the need for constant manual checking by anxious users. Beginners should see review as an investment that protects speed over time, because the fastest program is often the one that avoids preventable incidents. Review also has to account for the fact that AI outputs may be combined with retrieval and context, which can create privacy and permission risks. If the system can retrieve documents, the review process should include checking that outputs do not reveal content a user is not authorized to see. This may involve designing review triggers for outputs that include internal document content or references to restricted topics. It also involves aligning the AI layer with underlying access controls so the model cannot retrieve what the user cannot access. Review supports this alignment by detecting when the system bypasses expected boundaries. Beginners should remember that trust and safety include not only whether the output is correct, but whether it is permitted. A perfectly accurate answer can still be unsafe if it reveals restricted information to the wrong person. To keep business impact low, review must be integrated into normal tools and routines rather than becoming a separate gate that requires special effort. When review is easy to perform, people are more likely to do it consistently. This is a human factors truth that matters in security. Review workflows can include quick approval patterns for routine outputs, clearer escalation paths for risky outputs, and simple ways to capture examples for later analysis. The goal is to make the safe behavior the convenient behavior. Beginners should see this as designing processes that align incentives, because security processes that fight human nature tend to fail. When review is designed with the workflow in mind, it becomes part of normal quality control rather than a friction-heavy compliance task. To close, reviewing AI outputs for trust and safety without slowing the business means designing review as a targeted, risk-based control rather than an all-or-nothing policy. You define trust and safety clearly, then apply stronger review to higher consequence uses and lighter review to low-risk uses. You use sampling and exception-based triggers to focus human attention where it reduces the most harm, and you place review steps at the right points in the workflow to balance prevention and speed. You support reviewers with clear criteria and sustainable volume, so review does not collapse under fatigue. Most importantly, you connect review findings to improvements in prompts, validation, monitoring, and controls so the system becomes safer over time and the review burden can shrink. Task 20 is about building that balance, where review protects people and preserves trust while still allowing AI to deliver the efficiency and scale the business wants.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit DailyCyber.News.